Welcome everyone to the Family Life webinar series. I'm so glad to see all of you today here. I see people in the getting into their seats and getting ready for the broadcast. I'm Lorna McGrath and I'm your host. If you're new, welcome. We're glad you found us. And if you are returning, we're glad you're back. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I have two of my team members with me today, Cassie Mackey from Arizona and Cheryl Allen, who is going to lead us in this little discussion that we have today. And you can find out more about both of them on the handout that I just mentioned. So please feel free to do that.
Lorna, I'll say that I volunteered to lead this one because I just think reading out loud and reading books together is so much fun, and it's just a great thing you can do all the time. I'm always happy to read. So if somebody else wants to read the same book, I'm always happy to discuss it.
All right. Well, thank you, Cheryl. The magic of reading together, and it really is magical. And as long as your children want to and like to and enjoy reading together with you, do it. If they're 14, if they're 18, it doesn't matter. If they're adults and you have your own little family book club from wherever you are, it doesn't matter. Just go ahead because it's just such a wonderful thing. And so I'm going to go to the next slide, Cheryl, and let you get going.
All right.
I really am.
Well, and it doesn't even have to end when they're in their teens or young. I mean, I loved going to visit my mom's house, and there would always be a book that she had read that she thought I would like in the guest room where I would stay. So that was part of going there. It was always so much fun.
Sounds terrific. Sounds really good. I love it. All right. We didn't have a question for this week, did we?
We did not have a question for this one. I would love to know people's favorite books to read because I'm always looking for suggestions. So if you have, I hesitate to use the word favorite because I feel like it's choosing like your favorite child, choosing your favorite book. If you have one that you like to share, you think other people should read, take a minute and put it in the comments.
If you want to add one, if something comes to mind, oops, there's Gabrielle again and Patricia again. So Cheryl, do you want to read those off or do you want me to before you go into what you have to do?
I can read them. Gabrielle suggests the Magic Treehouse series, which, I mean, there are hundreds of them now, and they are great. They're so much fun. Patricia suggests the last of the really great Wang Doodles by Julie Edwards, who we may know as Julie Andrews, the actress. Those of us who are a little bit older may know that. And Gabrielle suggests The Incorrigible Children of Ashton Place. It's a series of 7 books.
Nice.
The Newgate School, which is the Foundation's lab school, is on Ashton Road. So that really makes me think they should have that. They should have that series.
Sure, for sure.
Raising Your Spirited Child, Maribel suggests that. And Owls in the Family by Farley Mowat. Patricia suggests that. And Gabrielle also suggests Pax and Pax Journey Home, PAX, if you can't. See, that sounds interesting.
That does sound interesting. I have to look that up.
I love it. Well, reading together.
Something along the way here, just go ahead and put it in there because we would love to have more on the list than we have. So, you know, whenever the spirit moves. In the meantime, let's talk about reading together.
Yeah, reading together does so much for you. It develops family connection. When you were putting those books in there, you may have been thinking about times that you read them with your family. And that's part of what it does. It also gives your family conversation starters. We talk often about keeping up conversation with your teenagers, and sometimes having something like a book that you've both read that's feels judgment free, because a lot of what we say, we mean judgment free, but it doesn't feel that way to our teenagers. That's a great place to have conversation.
For sure.
Books in general expose children to a greater variety of words than we use when we speak. As writers, we know that we use different words. As readers, we do that. And it is a huge number. According to some studies, it is in the millions over their school time, their years in school. So that gives bonus to everything. Cassie, do you want to talk about any of these?
I actually just wanted to give a little suggestion to exposing your children to a wide variety of words. I always like to tell parents and guardians to keep a little notebook by your child's bedstand or wherever you read books, and any words that come up that they are not familiar with, to write it down and to write a little definition down. And so their personal vocabulary list grows and grows and grows. And this is also a good habit to have you do as an adult. Have a little notebook next to your, when you're reading, and write down any words that you're unfamiliar with. So your children see that you are expanding your vocabulary and your knowledge, and it's okay that you don't know all those words, but that you are putting them someplace safe so that you can refer back to them and expand your word usage.
Cassie, I love that. That's one of the things that I kind of used to do when my kids were young, and I had forgotten about it. So I'm glad that you brought that up. That's terrific. Cheryl, I would like to do the next one, which is offers listening skills and practice. And I want to add another word. Reading together offers listening skills for sure, because somebody's reading and somebody's listening. But I want to add and imagination, especially if it's not a picture book. Like if it's a chapter book and you're reading it to your 5-year-old or your 6-year-old or whoever you're reading it to, there aren't any. There might be an occasional picture, but it's not like a picture book for young children. And so not only are they listening, which is really important, but they're taking what they're hearing and they're imagining what these characters look like, what the scene looks like, what's going on in this book, because they don't have an illustrator who's done all that work for them. So they really do have to kind of pay attention. Oh, I wonder if he has this blue shirt on today. Oh, that character always wears a blue shirt. I wonder if he has his blue shirt on today. Things like that just spark the imagination and that creativity. So that's another wonderful thing about reading together: listening skills and imagination.
And Lorna,
Cheryl, can I just bring one more thing up? When it comes to family connections, I always suggest starting to build a tradition around books and maybe giving books. When I was little, and my dad still does that, our favorite gift during the holiday was a stack of books my dad would give my sister and I never understood how he got it right. He always understood the books I was interested in and the books my sister was interested, because they were always very different. So that was a tradition that lasted throughout our whole life, and it really got us interested in reading. The second thing that I wanted to bring up is I was at a family my in-laws, my husband's mother had a big birthday celebration, and we were at dinner, and my husband would give our nieces books for every holiday. And we were sitting around the table, and they were actually talking about the same books that they're now reading. And I thought it just went full circle, that he used to give them books when they were little, and now they are sharing their ideas and their reviews about books that they're both reading at the same time. I just thought that was amazing and very sentimental, and it really spoke to my heart.
Nice.
I love that. And those are different ways of reading together. It doesn't always have to be reading out loud. It can be reading the same book. I just wanted to build on Lorna's, that we think of people as someone who can focus, or someone who can listen, or someone who's creative. But really, those are skills that are developed. So just like being able to run faster requires practice, so do all of those skills. So as parents, we have to consistently remind ourselves, oh yes, listening is a skill. The more I help them practice, or creativity is a skill. They're not just they don't just happen.
True enough. And the next one says opens discussion for your family values. You know, so many times when you're reading a book, sometimes the values you agree with in the book, and sometimes the values are like, not in our family. And so, but it opens up the door for a discussion of why and how and what our family does believe in, and all of that sort of thing. And that's just a wonderful thing. And sometimes it's an easier way to teach about family values than to say, okay, in our family, we always do this because blah, 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 blah. And so if it's characters in a book, it sometimes is enough removed that it feels like, it doesn't feel like they're getting a lecture. It just feels like we're talking about people in a book, characters in a book. And so that can be really a cool thing that happens when you're reading together.
To build on that is developing empathy and creativity, we have already talked about, but through exposure to new people and environments. I can't easily go to Africa, but I can read a book that takes place in a country in Africa. And that gives me more empathy and more understanding. I'm able to, my friend says, make that information a part of my soul. And that's a lot of what reading does. It makes it a part of me. So I can, even if I can't get to Africa, I can read about it in a fiction way, helps develop empathy, or nonfiction gives me more information, and I can learn about different places and different people, past and what the future may hold. So opens up all sorts of things. And that's not all of them, it's just fun.
That's for sure. It really is. The enjoyment of reading is such a marvelous treasure. We have a couple of people who have added a couple more books to our list here on the questions area. Debbie has said The Enchanted Hour, The Miraculous Power of Reading Aloud in the Age of Distraction, 2019 by Megan Cox Gordon, gives further reasons for reading aloud at all ages. Thank you. That sounds like a really interesting one too. And then Patricia has offered us two more. Tunnel Beneath the Sea by Ruth Sargent. And the other one that she is talking about, she's telling us a little bit about one that she wrote before, and that's the how do you say that, Cheryl? Whangdoodles?
Whangdoodles.
Whangdoodles. The Whangdoodles is exactly that. 3 children go to Whangdoodle land by way of their imagination. Great, great. Keep adding to it. We'll just keep letting you know what's in there.
feel like I need to pause and get the wang doodles. I think some people feel feel a little, well, Mo Willems says it's shame about reading out loud, but they feel uncomfortable. And I totally understand that. But it's also, if you just can let go of that, it's really fun. So use different voices and move and make your face mean when they're mean and happy when they're happy. You know? Do all of that little acting. It makes it so much more fun for the children. And also, even when I taught lower elementary, those 9-year-olds were still really into that. You know, read it with the voice, Miss Cheryl. So I know they are at home too.
That is a good one. That brings it to life, Cassie.
I just wanted to remind families also to make sure that when you are selecting books that you are providing, we often speak about it, them being windows, mirrors, so that your children can see characters that look and talk and act like them and their families and their own communities. And those books are really self-affirming, and it builds a lot of self-confidence. And it's important to have those collection of books, but it's also really important to have a collection of books that have different races and ethnicities and cultures and languages. And so the children can see different perspectives and different ways of being and different ways of I know there's books out there that show how different families have their evening dinner all over the world, or how they dress or how they speak. And it just opens up the world to our children so that they can see the diversity, and that differences are beautiful, and that it takes all of us to create this magic of our world. And I know that right now it's a touchy subject in some states, but I encourage parents to continue to look for books that teach kindness and grace and openness to people with different perspectives.
Definitely.
And that just reminds me of a book that I have to mention now, Cassie, because it reminded me, you know, you can start with a very young child, even a toddler or an infant. We got this great board book for Otis when he was little, and it was the alphabet for humility, I think was the name of it. And I'm sorry, I don't have that name right off the top of my head, but it was such a wonderful book because it would, like, for A, it might be appreciation, and B, it might be believing, and C, it would be compassion. And it was such a beautiful little book. And so that can start happening at a very young age. They may not be even talking yet, but they can hear what you're saying and they're taking it in. So it's really cool.
And that actually leads to, even though we have all of these different books, be understanding about reading books more than once, and even sometimes 5,000 times. It's part of how youngsters really feel comfortable and move on to the next. One of them in our house was Wacky Wednesday. And, you know, my daughter knew it so well that we pretty much didn't even have to read it. She could just say all the words even before she could read. And, you know, you couldn't, if you'd missed a word, she was going to tell you. So it felt like there was no purpose in reading, but there was a lot of purpose in reading because it was a lot of comfort, it was a lot of connection, and it was a lot of fun for her to already know what was going to happen.
Yeah. Children like that, oftentimes with rhyming books too, that now I'm talking about young children. And what they like about that is if you read the book and they get used to it and they know it, as you're reading and you get to the rhyming part or the repetition part, it's almost like a chorus. You know, they'll come right in and they'll say the chorus because they know what it's going to be. and they love it. They love to be able to chime in, especially before they can really read words, because of course we always tell them, oh, you're reading. You know, that is part of reading. So read books more than once, answer questions about words and ideas. And Cassie kind of mentioned that when she was talking about writing down the words that we don't really know, or that we're not familiar with, or they're not familiar with, but also ideas, not just words, but ideas, like what's happening in this story, or in this book, and talking about those things so the children can process through. And remember, you don't have to give the right answers. You can ask questions as you're talking about the books. And so helping them to think through, well, what happened with those children? How did those boxcar children get to live in a train car? I mean, you know, I wonder about that. And so different kinds of things can come up, and it helps the children to think and problem solve, and also to process information that they may have already gotten or didn't know about before they read that book.
I'm going to have to discuss the illustrations before that, because I feel like this goes perfectly. Debbie has suggested a couple books, Love You Forever.
Yes.
That actually, my mind is blinking on the author, but most of his books are great. We would read them all the time. And Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, that is a perfect one to talk about, discuss the illustrations, because they're so detailed and they're so much fun. And why is it raining waffles? It's a great idea, and fun to look at. Oh, thank you, Debbie. Debbie says Robert Munch is the author, and his books are very fun and silly, and also have big ideas behind them. So when we're talking about thinking about the ideas, it's for all ages of kids. When we read longer books, we often can't read it all at once. Chapter books, or even just some picture books, can be long, and we may fall asleep. The child may even fall asleep. That's really what I meant. So if you go back to it, ask questions about what happened. Not because you don't remember or you think they don't remember. It's really good practice. And sometimes talk about, oh, what might happen? Oh, the rabbit got a present. What do you think is going to happen next? Oh, they'll open it. Okay, let's see. You know, making those predictions, remembering what happened and making predictions are important skills for reading on their own. So if they don't know, it doesn't matter, but you know, you can continue to ask. And again, have fun.
Yeah. I'm gonna try very hard to change the, whoop, there we go. There we go.
Well, and Gabrielle suggests Boy in the Back of the Class. It's about refugees, tolerance, accepting differences, friendship, and justice. One of those. Mo Willems is an author. If you have young children, you probably know him. Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus, Elephant and Piggy. And I've seen him a lot on talk shows, and he is really funny. I really recommend anytime you see him. So this was actually when he was on Jimmy Fallon. He said that he was only responsible for 49% of the book as the author, and the rest is reading it out loud. And I thought, what a great idea, and what a great reminder for us that it is really important. I'm going to keep going back to what people are saying. Fish in a Tree, Gabrielle recommends that. That is a chapter book that really inspires great conversation. It's about dyslexia, bullying, perseverance, determination, and friendship. It's a great book. Lori, I feel
Sorry.
like maybe that's okay. We're ready to turn the
Oh,
page.
perfect timing then, huh? Okay, here we go. All right, here we go with our ages and stages, folks. I know you guys always like to do this with us, so we have it broken down to what kinds of things can you do with different aged children. So go ahead and get us started on that one, Cheryl.
Ooh, start at birth. Somebody asked me one time, how old should my child be before I start reading to them? I was like, well, in utero? That works. Before they're born, they can start hearing things in about the 5th month. But really at birth, it's a great time to just snuggle and associate books with love. And I mean, what else is more likely to make you want to read, but then think it's an expression of love?
Yeah, yeah.
If you want to do the next one.
Yeah, Cassie, you're quiet. Pick one. Anyone.
I was going to say that when you start out reading with your children, make it a very kind of the book a very sacred, special item
Yeah.
off of your shelf. And so in the Montessori classrooms, everything is displayed so beautifully. So you can display them in your child's room or in your living room. But when you take the book off the shelf, hold it with reverence and make sure that you say the title to them, and you can point to the title with your fingers and then talk about the author and talk about how this person wrote the book. And if there's an illustrator, talk about the illustrator. And if there's a dedication page. So you really want them to understand the whole concept of a book. And so you go through it all in a very kind of ritualistic way. Even the story is going to be different. They know that this is a special, magical trip into a different world. And so the way you present it to them is the way they're going to receive it. And the second one says, don't worry if young children leave part of the way through, because they will. Their attention span is limited, and they might be interested in something else. Something that you said might have sparked something that they remembered, and so they wanted to go do that with one of their toys or with their pet or something like that. So don't worry about that. That doesn't mean that they won't come back to it at a later time. But you don't want to ever force a child to just sit there and read with you until the book is over, because that is not going to be a special memory for them, and that's not going to create that love of reading that we want our children to have. And know that love of reading, there are sensitive periods in Montessori, but that love of reading might not happen till later. And I had it happen many times in my 4th through 6th grade classroom. They weren't interested in books very much until something sparked, till a sensitive period happened. I had this one child who really didn't enjoy books. It was a struggle for his parents. And it wasn't until 6th grade, and he happened to find a series that he really loved, and boom, it just opened up his world, and there was no turning back. So don't worry about that. It'll come when it comes, but you just need to keep providing those opportunities.
Absolutely. Cassie, I love everything that you said, but I want to go back to taking care and holding the book with reverence and that sort of thing. We start very early on in Montessori and in our home, our family home, teaching our children not only to hold them with care, but as you said, Cassie, put them away when you're finished. Don't leave it on the floor. Don't lay it down on something with the back open, flat, so the binding is flattened out. We actually gave them lessons on how to turn the page of a book carefully, and then how to gently press the page down so that you could, it would stay open. All of those things can start at a very early age to really help the child to know that books are precious, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's terrific. All right. Something else that we haven't said already on this one?
Well, I think Cassie talked about pointing out the title or the author, but as children age and you're reading to them 0 through 6, mostly when they can sit on their own, so you're not holding a baby and a book.
Yeah.
Point to the print. That's a first, well, it's an early stage of reading to figure out that the way that everybody knows to say the same thing on that page of the book is that print.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's not, we aren't born knowing that.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk more about, but if they bring up the story later, ask what they liked. Sometimes, even if they left partway through, later they'll say, oh, the blue ball book, or something that they left partway through to get their ball, and they'll come back to you. Ask what they liked, or go get it out again. Act on that. Cassie, I feel like the next one's all you.
Bring books for entertainment before screens. So we
Yes.
always want to, we're going to have another discussion about screen and screen time. And I know, and there's no judgment coming from us. We know that, sometimes parents will turn on, TVs or give a child a device while they're busy doing something else. There's no judgment. But if we start creating these habits of reaching for a book, or reaching for a magazine, or reaching for something that they can read, even if it is little cards with pictures and words on it, then that's what we want them to go to for entertainment first. And so if we have a variety of books that they might be interested in, especially as they get older into the 5 and 6 year olds, we want to make sure that there's a variety and not just what they're interested in, because they don't know what they don't know until you provide it for them. So you want to have books about science, you want to have books on animals, but also on machines. You want to have books on, as we mentioned before, different cultures. You want to have books that are humorous. You want to have books that have poetry in it. There are some great children's poetry books out there. You want to have books that have different kinds of illustrations. Some might be very colorful. Some might be done in watercolor. Others might be done in sketching or black and white. So you want to have that plethora of things that might be inviting to them. And again, the way you display it. So they might wake up one morning and they might have been talking about something in the car for a couple of days, and they wake up one morning and on your reading shelf or your library shelf, there's some new books with some great covers that have to do what they were talking about. And so that is something that they're going to be interested in. And then you might also want to have some writing materials around on that shelf, because they might want to pretend that they're writing if they're not already writing, or they might again want to write words that they don't recognize, or they might want to write down words that start with their own name. So you want to just really show that reading expands outside of just reading a book. You might have a little notepad of sticky notes, and they might ask you, what is this? And you say refrigerator. So you write the word refrigerator down and you put that sticky note on the refrigerator. And they love going around the house and asking what things are called and how they're written. And they go around reading those words. So again, try to expand it so it's not just in between the pages of the book, but it explodes out into your household.
Absolutely. I want to do a couple of things first. There are more books on in our questions area, so don't miss out on those. But one thing that Patricia said, try saying or asking actually, what is the problem this character is having? So to get them thinking about solutions to things and problem solving in that way, and that's a terrific idea. And as I said, there are quite a few more books in there that we haven't mentioned, but we really do have to get going, because guess what? As usual, we have 5 minutes left. So let's quickly see if we can, I think we're pretty much done with this particular.
As you change the slide, I do just want to talk about let your child see you reading for enjoyment. I know that is super hard with 0 to 6-year-olds, but if you can read a little bit when you know they're going to wake up from their nap and they come out and they see you reading a book, that role modeling, which is really hard to do, but it's a lot for them. It makes it much more important. 6 to 12-year-olds, all of the above, and this is where I would really say with Patricia, ask about the problems, ask about what's happening with the characters, because they're going to be reading more involved books. And Cassie talked about all of the different kinds of books. I think this comes up at the end, but go to the library and let them pick their own books within your guidelines. But that's a great way to try on so many books and have examples of so many different kinds of books without, having to spend all that money, and you still have a place that you can walk because you return them.
That's great. The next one I think is a really important one, and it's near and dear to my heart. So I'm going to do that one. Do not expect emergent readers to read aloud when they're tired. They've had their whole day, they've gone to school, they've, played outside after school or gone to some kind of either sports or a dance class or something. They've maybe had to do some kind of homework, some kind of something. And now we're going to ask them to read out loud. Reading out loud is a challenging skill for emergent readers. That they can process those words and they can read those words, but it's in their own head. So it's just one thing. I have to process these words and read them. When you're reading out loud, not only do you have to read the correct words, which for an emergent reader is challenging because they don't maybe know all the words and they're not used to it, but also, reading out loud, they have to hear it and take in the content. That's tricky to do. That's two skills. It's reading and listening at the same time almost. And that is a very tricky thing for kids to do. And when they're tired, it's even worse. You don't want your child to end up crying because they can't do it. So Saturday mornings are good.
And also, Linda, sometimes your children will get to the age where they don't want you to read, but they have difficulty reading as well. So having an older sibling read, having an aunt or uncle, grandma or grandpa read, sometimes that works. But also don't shy away from, you don't want to rely on this, but don't shy away from books on tape. Oftentimes when a child is struggling, they want to read some books because they can comprehend and they're just having trouble reading, but they can comprehend the information in it. So having books on tape where they can listen and also follow along in a book is really helpful. And also listening to a book on tape in the car. So when you are driving around, you go on a long trip or you're going A to B, you might want to stick in an audiobook so they can get that storytelling and that information as well. And don't forget, with older children, you want to make sure that they are reading information that they can get or they're reading text that they can get information from. So if recipes, so they're reading recipes or a magazine where their recipe is so that they can help with the recipe. They might need to be, because they're going to need to be reading different text in order to do different assignments at school. So practicing that at home is really helpful.
Okay, yes. We're on time to say goodbye, so we better hurry.
All right, I just want to talk really quickly about developing a time when the family's reading together. just if you can find a time after dinner, we read for 15 minutes rather than turning on the TV. And that might be for older children, maybe they're reading something that they're doing for homework, and younger children are reading a picture book, you're reading a novel or work that you brought home, whatever you're reading, everybody's reading.
Okay, reading with 12 to 18-year-olds, of course, all of the above, but here they are now. They're preteens and teenagers, and so, really listen to them and read your older child's a book that they recommend, and then talk about it. So it's kind of like your own little book club in a way, and sometimes people for Christmas or other occasions, birthdays, other occasions, they actually give, I think of Christmas because we give to each other, but birthdays, it could be done too. They actually give the same book to each of the family members. And then they have a little, a little sort of a book club, and they all read the same book and talk about it later, or sharing that book and reading it together if you don't want to buy multiple copies. And our trees, they go into those books. So we don't want to do that. Okay. Quickly, try not to judge their reading choices as long as it fits with your family values. So again, you need to take a look at what they are reading or what they want to read and make sure that it fits with your family values. And if it doesn't, find a neutral time to talk about the family values and maybe a particular family value that has come up.
But also, Lauren, can I
Mhm.
build on that? Don't dismiss graphic novels or
Right.
comic books just because they have lots of pictures. They often have higher vocabulary because they have fewer words. So they have to use more specific words than the non-graphic novel version of it. So Cassie talked about a variety of reading. All of those are okay. Don't dismiss picture books or graphic novels or any of that, as long as there's variety.
Yeah. The next one says more reading in school may mean less reading for fun. Have books available for vacations. And I think Cassie kind of alluded to that as well. When you're in that car or on that plane or, somewhere, they can have a book and they can be reading that during that time. And keep up a time when the family is reading together. Yeah, don't just dismiss that part of your family life because they're teenagers. Keep that going. And as we have said earlier in this webinar, it can go into adulthood. You can read the same book. My son lives in Philadelphia, and we can read the same book and then talk about it when we go on FaceTime. I mean, there are all kinds of ways to do that sort of thing. Let's see. I think that this, no, yes,
Oh,
that was the slide. So
Gab-
let's, Cheryl.
Okay, Gabrielle says, pairing the audiobook with the chapter book has been a game changer for my kids, 8 and 10 years old. It's boosted their confidence to read books they otherwise wouldn't pick up to read on their own. Definitely, I'm going to say my cousin is severely dyslexic. He is also Dr. Breck because he has his PhD in reading specialties. And it was so much work for him, but he's like, if there weren't people who read the books out loud, I couldn't do any of this. And he tells me that all the time. So a few hints, we already talked about most of them. Visit the library, let your child see you reading, keep at level and just above level books around the house so that you're ready when they're ready to move on. If they're not reading chapter books, maybe you have a couple that you have on a shelf. So when they're like, I wish I could read a chapter book. Oh, you know what? Here, try this one. We talked about being open to different genres of reading and characters' choices to talk about family values. And I feel like we can't say have fun around reading enough.
agree.
Kathy, you were going to say something.
I just wanted to make sure, because I just want to say this, is please try not to use reading as a bargaining chip. You know, if you read for this much time, then you can get on the screen. And also don't use it as a threat. Because we don't want it to be a chore or a duty. It should be offered as just this precious gift to your children. And then the third thing is they have to see you reading. We've said that many times, but it's so important for them to see that you are a reader as well.
Thank you. I think that's a perfect way to close. Thanks everybody for coming today. We do have a couple of interesting webinars coming up. We will see you next week with Cassie leading us off on downtime, and have a great week. Bye for now.
Bye.